Welcome back to Press Here. All over America this weekend, teenage boys are failing to mow the lawn or do their homework and are instead choosing to play Halo 4 against each other on the internet over Xbox, which means a small but significant amount of the information moving back and forth across the internet will be data from video game laser guns. Halo is a $3 billion franchise. It's one of Microsoft's most successful products. Sean Sweeney has been tracking Halo's traffic across the internet. He is a deep packet inspector from Silicon Valley's Procera. Thank you for being with us this morning. May we call you Inspector?
You may.
All right, Inspector Sweeney then. There is a small but measurable impact. I mean, you could see Halo 4 come on the internet, right?
We could actually, yes, but the results were somewhat surprising. There was some other event going on Tuesday, as it happens, and so that
was popular too.
And
yes.
Yeah, it was in fact, and a little more popular than Halo. So what it appears, at least the early returns, are that while there was an uptick in gaming, certainly in a broad way, counterintuitively, it had something to do with some of the other gaming platforms, and Halo is just now starting to take off today. I took a closer look at the data today, and we're just now starting to see the impact. So on release date, it didn't take off quite the way you would have expected. Now there is some information out there from Forbes that there may have been some glitches and some issues relative to that. It looks like those are getting, yeah, it looks like those are getting ironed out. But there were more users on the internet. However, they were reading. They were doing traditional web traffic as it occurs. So I think it was more.
Do the analogy for us about, and use the analogy of the envelope passing through the post office.
Sure.
How do you know that's a Halo, and not in too specific a term, but
Understood.
How do you know it's a Halo packet?
Well, there's all kinds of fields within these packets, and we're able to take a look at those and then determine what they're saying. So, for example, Halo has a specific title ID. So we know exactly what it's going to and how to differentiate it from one of the previous versions of the game.
Now, my current "this can't possibly be true" factoid from this month was something I saw recently that suggested that one application was responsible for close to a third of all the U.S. bandwidth.
Well, I bet I can guess what it is.
You guess what it is. It's Netflix.
Of course,
Can that
yeah.
possibly be true?
It can actually possibly be true. In my review in the lead up to this, I was seeing, anywhere between, let's say, 25% of a provider's bandwidth up to 50 to 55% could be Netflix at any given time. Now, what was interesting is it shut down around Sunday. In other words, it climbed, and then Sunday night it kind of went away. And again, people went back towards reading and researching, and more users were coming on the network. But again, they were doing traditional things like paying attention to their civic duty, apparently. So,
the kind of sort of technology you've got, it presumably works sort of two ways. Because one, you can, if I'm a internet service provider or I'm a telecoms company, I'm really interested in what traffic's coming across
Sure.
my networks. But if I was say a government, say in China or in Iran, I might also be very interested to see exactly who's sending what kinds of messages. So your technology sort of works. It could be used for good. It could also be used for censorship, for shutting down opponents. So how do you make sure that that doesn't happen with your?
Well, I mean, we're an honest company, and that's what I can say around that. We don't specifically market or sell the product around the more devious aspects that it could be deployed for. Again, most of our service provider customers are so busy worrying about managing the traffic in their networks and trying to determine how to keep their subscribers, which they can do with our equipment via a variety of personalized services for the gaming public. They can tailor services around that, as an example. So our customers are really focused on that. Clearly, there's other things that can be done with the data that we provide, but that's always been true of all internet technologies. It's always been there. So, while we provide a little more detail on it and certainly more color, we like to think the ability to do some of these kind of nefarious things that you're suggesting has always been out there.
I'm interested in your reaction to the whole net neutrality debate, this issue or question of whether a Netflix or a Halo should be able to get a free ride, or should have to pay for the amount of bandwidth that they're consuming, or get special treatment.
Sure. Well, we're neutral on net neutrality, of course. But I think in many countries there are no net neutrality rules, and there is a recognition that the service provider has to maintain his network however he sees fit, and they need to be able to manage capacity within that network. And so in the example we were talking about previously, you know, if Netflix is taking up 50% of the bandwidth, well, that needs to be looked at or addressed or at least understood from a service provider perspective. So we think over time you're going to see kind of a maturation in view here, and that people will, or service providers will look to package again personalized services if you're a Netflix watcher, so that you can get the appropriate level of Netflix.
Which is not net neutrality. You are in that case paying for it. I do see the argument though, and that is net neutrality sounds like a very good idea until the kid next door is using so much traffic on BitTorrent that I can't get anything accomplished, and then I go complain to Verizon or I go complain to Comcast or whatnot, because now I'm a dissatisfied customer, even though really, I guess, inherently I would support net neutrality.
Right. We need to understand that we're dealing with a shared resource here. So if there's no responsibility on the end user, and they're certainly not required to do that, then somebody needs to enforce it. And the service provider needs to take a look at some of these things, and they need to be in the position to do something about it. Otherwise, as you say, BitTorrent might take over the world or represent a larger piece of the overall internet bandwidth, and that wouldn't necessarily be good for anybody.
Sean Sweeney is with Procera. We appreciate you being with us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Press here will be back in just a minute.